Hello everybody, boy with the beanie back here again with another video, and this is the long requested Gilgamesh. Now I've been trying to avoid this video because I had no idea how many people actually watched through the entirety of my videos, and this is like almost 40 minutes long, so I could see the video being 40 minutes and more, so let's stop talking and start watching. Also, I remember this guy and the iconic laugh. I don't actually remember him with power. You know what I mean. I actually remember this laugh here.
Listen, it's been a long time in the making. We finally here. The oldest hero, the strongest of spirits. Everybody clear out the way. It's a movie. Don't sleep on Gilgamesh. We ran the polls, it ended up coming real close, but the best always has to come out on top. Let's get into it. From the time that we see him fighting in the Fey route, we know that he has good close range prowess, being able to pick up Saber's entire body by the foot. In the UB-Dub route, when he was trying to use Ilya to manifest the Grail, he literally one-shotted her by digging out her heart with his bare hands. In his fight against Saber, he was overwhelming her in close range combat despite her having Excalibur and being claimed to have better sword skills. In Fate Strange Fate, we got a display of his endurance where his master had to use windbreak and gravity manipulations just to fend off something that he could hold back using his own defense. He was able to dodge several blows from Richard the Lionheart and parry a surprise attack despite him having superb sword skills. In the Fate route, when Saber tried to attack him with all her strength from her Excalibur, he swallowed the attack whole just from countering with Aya. When he was trying to manifest his own version of the Grail, he nearly ended Shinji's life. In Fate Extra, we know that he destroyed a several-fold lock with brute strength alone. For all the people who think that he can't fight close range, if you look at his backstory with Enkidu, what is this? Looks like close range to me. He had the dexterity to throw a phantasm straight through Ku's chest during their battle. In Fate Extella, we know that he's
hold on. My brother told me about this.
straight through Ku's chest.
All these things. So that's like the portals and shit. He can pull just random weapons out of. Also has hella cool style, but still, I wish I had those. Mostly because I'm an idiot and I keep forgetting my wallet home. So I can just imagine that I just reach back in here and boom, you have. Well, a wallet is kind of a basic thing. I would do some bullshit with that. Just reach back into like a fucking portal or something and then eat 10 warthog. Because why not?
During their battle. In Fate Extella, we know that he's capable of one-shotting the main character with just his energy alone. With the help of Enkidu, he was able to drive off the Bull of Heaven, a literal divine beast capable of ravaging the entire planet. Merlin also confirmed this back in Babylonia when he said that the bull can destroy the entire world. Once again, despite Saber having better techniques, there was a part of their fight where he was blocking her with his bare hands. I don't even gotta pull out the weapon. It gets dangerous. He has his own set of phantasmal armor that makes him nearly impenetrable to regular attacks. For the majority of his first fight with Saber, he didn't have a scratch on him. Even when she was able to counter his attack, the damage that he received was exactly that, a minimal scratch. He tanked a barrage of Ren's Gander bullets, not even bothering to move out the way. To a Magus, this can normally one-shot you. In a Q&A that went down with Nasu, he mentions that Gil could pull something out of his gate that has a high enough defense to block Sasuke's phantasm, which we know incorporates the second magic, some of the strongest magic in the verse. He also mentioned—
Okay, hold up. I recently did Sasaki and I thought he was hella broken. Well, not exactly broken like on Ishtar levels, but you know what I mean. But Okay, fine. No one why people like
That
Gilgamesh
he
so
has the foresight to gauge the strength of his enemy. He wouldn't fight Sasuke at close range to begin with. He completely survived being in the vicinity of Saber's Excalibur and didn't have a scratch on him. In Fate Extra CCC, he mentions that his armor can block against evil spirits. Paralysis techniques like something that comes from Medusa or the Bull of Heaven won't work either. You have Fate Strange Fate, where Heracles was even stronger than he was in Stay Night. He tried to snipe Gil from miles away, and Gil literally batted a colossal arrow into the ceiling with the back of his hand. Keep in mind that the arrow of Heracles is faster than the speed of lightning, and Gil got rid of it like he was trying to hit a home run. This same attack was only able to put a crack in Gil's armor. He survived at the same rate in his fight against Richard the Lionheart, with him only having cracks in his armor when it was all said and done. He has an unparalleled sense of self, Saber being horrified that he was drowned in the Grail mud and nothing happened to him. He goes on to flex on her, telling her that you need at least 3 times as much mud if you want to begin to do something to my mental. The story itself tells us out of all the servants by that point in time, he was the only one who could avoid this fate. Sakura also confirmed this in Heaven's Field, saying that Gil just simply can't be corrupted. From his backstory in Fate Extra, we know that he had an all-out battle with Enkidu for several days straight, Enkidu also being a top servant. He is one of the only people to survive the imaginary sea, a literal alternate reality that would normally have the power to take your life. In Fate Extra, he tells us that he slept for 2 millenniums and still boasted a high amount of power, even though he claims he's rusty. He also went on to mention that he slept for an eternity in the underworld. This is nothing to him. Hakuno tells us that most people would have atrophied from being asleep this long, but the fact that Gil can keep himself up means he's on a whole nother level. We know that Gil was able to survive the pure agony of the Hydra's poison from the arrows of Heracles. This same poison is what caused the great Chiron to beg for his own death in his backstory because it hurt so bad, and Gil just tanked it. His endurance is through the roof. It took a fight with Richard the Lionheart, fighting off the Grail mud, multiple shots from Heracles while he was getting reinforced with Jack the Ripper's phantasm, Ishtar sealing his entire gate of Babylon so he can't use it, and a spear from Humbaba just to bring Gil down. And he still didn't die. This is the true death.
I just saw Ishtar. What the hell rank are you gonna put? We're 6 minutes in. What? Okay.
Definition of build different. Even while the hits were affecting him from multiple places, he still took the hits on his feet. Even at his worst, his body as a king would not allow him to bend the knee. In the UB-Dub route, we know that he has magical energy shields that he used to fend off attacks when Ren was using her gem magecraft. Keep in mind, this same magecraft was enough to take the life of Heracles on multiple occasions. He used this same magical shield to absorb an entire blast from Ilya in the Fey route. He straight up blocked an attack from Meltrolis with one hand to protect his master. In CCC, he blocked a surprise attack from Robin Hood in his confrontation with BB while he was trying to get off an attack himself. From Fate Stay Night, we know that he is one of the only servants that's ever been completely incarnated and given a full body. He has great reflexes, being able to dodge Saber despite not being able to see. He completely evaded Saber's wind release with little to no time to spare. In Heaven's Field, he was literally unbothered by the shadow taking off half of his leg, other than the fact of feeling disrespected. He was able to fend off a surprise attack from Ku Cullen with ease, and as I mentioned before, he also went head to head with Ku Cullen for 12 hours straight and beat him. Ku also being a top tier servant. Then they had a rematch in Extella. From his backstory, we saw him dodge multiple chains of heaven from Enkidu during their battle, these coming out at Mach speed. In Fate Extra, he survived being transported 1500 light years away along with his master. In Fate Strange Fate, they briefly mentioned that he has the ability to teleport. In his fight against Enkidu, it was shown to us that he is one of the only servants that has the ability to fly. You had a shaman mention that even when he used his fastest spell, he still couldn't catch up to Gil in his flight. You have his A-rank independent action that allows him to use his phantasm even without his master. He also completely ignored orders from Tokiomi. Back at the time of Fate Zero's release, he was outright stated to be the strongest heroic spirit. Tokiomi mentions that if Gil chooses, he can cut off his connection and hide everything he does from him. In Heaven's Field,
I guess and that's what my brother mentioned by an independent servant. So the servant just independent away from the master and can't say no. I kinda gain it, but not really. There's still so much.
It was stated that Gil's soul holds so much gravity that it's equivalent to eating hundreds of thousands of humans. You have the statement from Richard the Lionheart, who says that Gil's spirit origin is at least on the same level as Enkidu, and how he has no chance in defeating him. In Fate Extella, you had Tamamo mention how he has the highest mana pool out of all the servants. Even she couldn't surpass him. As I've mentioned before, Gil is one of the only servants that couldn't be altered. Even in Heaven's Field, Sakura had to hurry up and finish eating him or he would have bust her open from the inside. In Fate Zero, it was outright stated that when he drowned in the Grail mud, Angra could not consume him. From his profile, we know that he's at least 2/3 deity, and he even nerfed himself because he doesn't like the gods. Looking at his A+ charisma, he has a self-confidence that's unmatched, only being able to back down under the most dire circumstances. And just looking at Strange Fate, even then he's going.
Look at it. This man's literally just like a young Escano without the mustache.
Most dire circumstances. And just looking at Strange Fate, even then he's going out on his feet. In the Fate route, just his gaze alone was enough to freeze Medea into shock. She knew she was gonna die. You had Shiro mention that just being in his presence makes it feel like death is unavoidable. We know that he was negating Zoken's worms, even though they're known for sapping magical energy. The story tells us that Gil was the only servant to put fear in the shadow in Heaven's Field. When it comes to Ataraxia, even the Shades were terrified just to be around his powerful aura. Looking at his interlude, we know that he can manifest souls of the dead at will. In the fight that he had against Enkidu during Strange Fate, it stated that he fired thousands of phantasms in one night. These guys were going at it.
Can't those things only be fired like a certain amount of times, or is that the command spell? I remember. Sheesh, Brian, have a lot to educate. No, any comments or later?
If you take a look at his material, it tells us that everything from his Gate of Babylon is at least firing at bullet speed. And even when he uses the gate, it doesn't expend his energy. It counts each one of his shots as one move. In Hollow Ataraxia, he bodied Sasuke and Kazuki back to back with a flawless victory. You have the Q&A with Nasu, where he mentions that he could beat Arkaway with her using 30% of her power. Arkaway being one of the strongest characters in the verse, period. I mean, literally top 10. He also mentions that he could beat Salter in the right circumstances. He flat out won the Moon Cell Grail War in Fate Extra. He was able to heal Hakuno back to full health despite them being fatally injured. Due to him being the first hero on record, he has access to every single phantasm in history in his Gate of Babylon. He easily was able to kill off one of the 100 Fate face Hassan's when they tried to sneak into the Tosaka mansion with just 4 of his phantasms.
All
It
the
stated that
phantasms?
Gil had the power to split a mountain and took out 1/3 of Jill's monster. He can shoot phantasms while he's
like 11
mobilized.
minutes
This is
in. What
evidenced
the-
by the battle he had when he was on his ship. He fired
the
a
hell?
bare minimum of 80 phantasms in his one-on-one against Iskander. Just the collision of his phantasms was enough to blow Saber down and throw her across the room. In his fight against Lancelot, he manifested shields to block his missiles while mid-air. You had the claim from Waver, who said that he killed one of the personas so fast that he couldn't even discern it. From his fights with Saber, we know that he can casually push out phantasms at lightning speed. In Fate Zero, he tells us that his treasures are so boundless that even he doesn't know the extent of his own wealth. Imagine, I see a lot of these guys with their skills and their weapons, but do they have the finest bottles of wine on the go? Gil can pull this out his gate at any time. Some of his phantasms even come with the tracking ability. This is also evidenced in his fight against Lancelot. He tactfully used his phantasms to make a wall against Lancelot to prevent his escape. In the Fate route, once again, we know that he's the one that straight up off-screen Sasuke with no problem. He fatally shot Shiro through the chest with just a snap of his fingers. He mowed down a massive number of Medea's Dragon Tooth warriors with no issue. His sword spam has been compared to the output of a machine gun. He easily minced through Medea's conceptual shield that's been compared to taking a life from Heracles in defense. He literally destroyed Medea in one barrage of his phantasms the moment that he showed up. I mean, this was one of the most gruesome and devastating things I've ever seen in my life. Just disgusting. I still can't believe it to this day. This is why Gil has to be held back by the plot. If it wasn't for that, he would go around doing this to everybody. The story even tells us that she tried to fly away and the only thing that was left was her cloak. Before that, she also tried to regenerate. This too only lasted for about 10 seconds. The man literally ate through regeneration. The story tells us that back when Gil snapped his fingers against Shiro, it felt like all of the bones in his body were broken and he couldn't feel his limbs. Complementary to him having every prototype that exists, Gil summoned the original version of Caliburn, which was Marduk. The story tells us that this same attack is on par with the one that took the lives of Heracles 6 times at once, which also confirms that Gil too can
Hold on.
tells us summon the original version of Caliburn.
So he has the original prototypes for every weapon. Does that count for every weapon up to that point? Or every weapon, like, in general? Like, is this man just going to phantasm some nuclear bomb and holocaust like some poor part of the Fate verse? Like, I don't know. Like, think about it, right? Sasaki's phantasm, he has that whole like 3-strike thing. It comes to the side, front, and then the back. I can just imagine Gilgamesh is just there, uses an normal phantasm, and he's like, nice cuts. Here's a fucking nuke, and then he just drops it on some poor asshole's head. Like I want to know if that's a thing. Do you have every weapon? Do you have like every weapon that was ever made a prototype or anything, or do you have every weapon up until a certain point?
Burn, which was it. Gil too can one-shot half of the lives of Heracles. We know that Gil sliced Shiro's entire body in half, and the only reason he did survive is because of his regeneration. Just using his barrage of phantasms was enough to take out majority of Saber's armor in their battle. The story tells us that not only did Gil block Ilya's blast, but he reflected it back to her. In a conversation with Rin, she mentions how she saw at least 6 of some of the most well-known phantasms around, including Gable. We know that some of his phantasms can come out with the curse effect applied. He has access to an invisible sword, which allows him to hide the trajectory of his attacks. He has a sword that's made of ice that can literally freeze the space that it comes in contact with. This is absurd. He has access to a scythe that can warp space. This same scythe literally going through Saber's armor and eating at her magical energy. He can pull phantasms out of his vault and fight with them on his own at any time that he chooses. When it comes to the weapons in his vault, on top of them already being strong, some of them have their own unique abilities. Just the clashing of his phantasms was enough to hold back the monstrous hits of Heracles. His barrage was enough to hold back Heracles when he tried to do one of his charge attacks. After using his chains of heaven, it stated that he pierced Heracles 22 times and finished him off on top of that. We know that he can combine the collision of multiple phantasms to create an explosion. In the Heaven's Field route, we know that he straight up annihilated Sakura before the shadow put her back together. In Strange Fate, he goes blow for blow with thousands of blades against Enkidu. He was able to negate several Mach speed arrows from Heracles without even lifting a finger. Mind you that the arrows of Heracles were so fast that they created tornadoes behind them, and they still did nothing to Gil. In his fight against Richard, he successfully pierced him multiple times at once. Right after he defeated Richard, Heracles tried to blindside Gil from several kilometers away, and he still blocked it at the last second. On top of him having his magical shields, he can also summon physical shields to block him anytime that he wants, as we've seen with his defense against Hippolyta. This that 2-3 defense, my guy. This is the defense that wins championships. Oh, you're tired of Gil's weapons? Well, how about this? He can literally summon thunderbolts out of his gate, confirming that he has access to at least lightning level reactions. These are the same thunderbolts that...
Okay, so we know the gates can shoot out noble phantasms, and it's like and all of it has a prototype of every weapon. I'm not sure if it's every weapon ever, every weapon conceived. Does he have Zeus's thunderbolts? Like, can he just reach in there and then just push somebody? Like, does he have that, or I don't know, educate me in the comments.
It can turn down most attacks if he sets them up prior. Once again, he destroyed the arrow of Heracles from several miles away on the top of a skyscraper. It later confirms that the distance was at least 12 miles. The story reinforcing the fact that you and Gil are not the same. You had the story flat out tell us that the average servant would have been one-shotted by the attack that Gil blocked. It tells us that the same divine spirit that he blocked from Hippolyta had enough power to truck through a wall of his phantasms, and he still stopped it. He tactfully was using his shields to block back-to-back Excalibur blasts from Richard the Lionheart. It tells us that he blocked over 20 Excalibur blasts, each shot being stronger than the last one. We know that he blocked a supersonic arrow from Hurt to protect his master at point blank. The crazy part about it is he blocked the attack with his ship. Even the ship comes with detachable defense. It stated that Richard could only hold back so many of Gil's phantasms before he was overwhelmed. You have his potion of youth, which allows him to return to his child state while keeping his mental capacity. This is also something that was shown to us in Hollow Ataraxia and FGO. He gave his master access to an invisibility ring. The max limit of its deception is on the level of fooling civilians. He has an independent lens that operates as a telescope that allowed him to survey Heracles from a distance. He's got furniture, he's got ornaments that he can use to decorate any location that he pleases. Just picture Gil doing an episode of MTV Cribs, and there you have it. He has access to every known torture device that's ever existed in mankind. Since his gate recognizes the elements as human creations, he has access to those.
Does he have the ice cream press? Like, I know that wouldn't make sense to anybody, But I just call that torture method the ice cream press. It's like, I don't know if anybody's gonna watch this far into the video, so I'm just gonna tell you all about it. Think of, enjoy the ice cream sandwiches, I just have two things underneath there, and you have the hose on top. But imagine the same concept, only it's two like really heavy pieces of board. And instead of ice cream in the middle, it's you in the middle. And on both pieces of boards, it have like spikes this long and pointed like hell. And it just squish. That's why I call it the ice cream press, because it's just you lying down there and then two people just bah! With spikes all over your face, and then you just make it into the worst bloodied ice cream sandwich. Does he have that? And if he has that, can he just open like two gates inside of somebody and then can he do that? Somebody want help. That's all I can say. Help.
Those two, he shot off fire, ice, and lightning at Heracles at the same time. When you're riding out with Gil, you're gonna get the best flight services in the world. He's got parachutes on deck for his master and her party. He had a conversation with his master where he mentioned with the power of the command spells, he could completely one-shot the city of Snowfield. The story tells us that just the residual damage from his fight with Heracles was enough to destroy entire buildings. As I mentioned before, Ishtar had to completely lock the gate of Babylon for her to even stand a chance against Gil while he was already fighting against Heracles. Y'all can't hold this man. In FGO, there's an instance where he defeated the great beast Humbaba in the presence of Kingu. We know that by spending 90% of the treasure in his vault, Gil was able to reach the near side of the moon, something that normally shouldn't even be possible. It also confirms that he can cross between parallel planes. We know that he can use his Gate of Babylon as a method of teleportation, evidenced by the fact that he transported Shinji in the UB-Dub route. He was able to fend off a countless amount of shades and hollow ataraxia that began to flood throughout the entire city. From Fate Extra, we know that he has a phantasmal elixir that can poison his enemy if he gets the chance to serve it. He has poisonous phantasmal armaments that we saw him use in his fight against Altera. Again, if you take a look at the materials, it says that pretty much anything can be found in this gate. It literally has no bounds. From the UB-Dub route, we know that his chains of heaven can bind space itself. These same chains were even able to negate a command spell from Ilya when she tried to save Heracles. Their main function is to immobilize targets of divinity. The more divinity you have, the stronger these chains become. In Fate Zero, in his fight against Iskander, the stronger the is to immobilize targets of divinity. The more divinity you have, the stronger the
Oh, I thought
these chains become. In Fate Zero, in his fight against Iskander, despite the fact that Iskander has low divinity, Gil was still able to stop him in his tracks at point blank. He easily was able to immobilize Cuchulainn when they went head to head in their battle. The story tells us that he used these same chains to hold down the Bull of Heaven, and depending on the strength of his target, he can only hold them down for so long. We've seen him use these chains to hold down the Grail modified Shinji. He even used these chains to avoid his death and prolong him being sucked into a void of space. When it comes to Gil's ship, it's stated to be faster than the speed of thought. What does that even mean? It's so fast that it can't even be quantified in words. In his fight against Lancelot, we know that he was able to use this ship to catch up with
I want that ship. Okay? But here's the reason why. My brain is unlike my mouth on camera. If you know me in real life, you know I don't shut up. If you know me in real life, I don't shut up. My brain is more or less the same thing. So if this bitch runs at the speed of thought, and if I had control over it, that would no longer be the speed of thought. That would be the speed of thinking with crackhead energy. Because this thing just doesn't shut up. I slightly figured out how to time travel with it. I'm working on multiple other things. I'm not gonna say it because somebody might take my idea. You're gonna see me in the future. Haha. Okay. But yeah, if I had a ship like that, just imagine the things I could do, especially since my brain doesn't stop talking. I guess I think about the ship. Kinda just thinking about how fast it
But
is.
Lancelot's jet with no problem. His ancient ship, the Vimana, is the same ship that shows up in the two epics Mahabharata and Ramayana. From Fate Zero, we find out that the ship is solar powered, meaning he doesn't have to worry about its mana use. It's stated that this ship has ancient nuclear weapons that would put Area 51 to shame. It has multiple systems of defense that's ready to
I still
fend
want him
off
to drop
certain
a nuke
attacks
on
when he
somebody.
needs it. Back when he was going
Not even
against
a serious fight,
Iskander,
just for
he
kicks.
beat him without getting a scratch
like,
on
nope.
him. Iskander even going as far to compliment him on his power. Then of course you have the unique sword that split the heavens and earth, Aya. We know that it can't be replicated since it's created from materials that's not on this planet. It can multiply his strength 20-fold, and this can still go higher depending on who's his master. It is one of the strongest weapons in Fate, period. At the
Okay, so
very
clearly
least,
it's
it's
not
on
a
par with
thrusting-based
Excalibur,
weapon
and
that
at
has
times it can
tip.
be even stronger than that. In contrast to Excalibur,
But I'm very
however,
certain it's
it doesn't
sharp.
have seals, so normally this would be the better weapon. Despite being able to trace other weapons, Shiro couldn't even begin to understand its concept nor replicate it. Just trying to do this was causing friction in his mind. Just from charging one of his attacks, Aya is known to swallow the winds that surround it. The story tells us that this same weapon can literally dislocate space, which confirms more spatial warping on top of him having the Gate of Babylon. Looking back at Strange Fate, we know that as an anti-world phantasm, it has the power to destroy the entire world or a layer of the planet itself,
He's getting
given
up,
the right
he's going
circumstance.
broke.
Oh,
His
you
rating
got
is going to be-
concepts? No problem. This man punched through an alternate dimension with his fist alone. Back when he used Aya against Iskander in Fate Zero, he distorted the laws of space, destroyed Iskander's reality marble, and every soldier that he had within it with no problem. Each soldier being on the level of a fake servant on top of that. Just the cylinders from him charging Aya has been compared to shifting tectonic plates in the Earth's crust. Before Saber had her Avalon, he effortlessly destroyed her with Aya and thought nothing about it. Just the wind release from his Aya alone was enough to obliterate the arm of the modified Grail. These same winds are said to swallow space itself and create tornadoes behind them. In his battle against Enkidu, Enkidu had to summon the most powerful defense he could from space in order to fend off Gil's attack from Aya. The landing behind one of his blasts was enough to create a massive crater in the ground. Their endurance is insane. It's stated that they both could have went for 3 days straight if they were given the opportunity. Out of all the servants that could have been summoned in Babylonia, Gil was the one that showed up at the end and finished off the weakened Tiamat. Mind you that even in her weakened state, she can still body majority of the servants out there. Between FGO and the Extraverse, we're able to see the true pinnacle of his power with Aya. Given the circumstances, he is able to manifest 3 galaxies worth of energy to thrust into his enemy. You guys are dust. You had the time where Heracles pulled up on Gil and said, "You're not good unless you use Aya on me." My boy Gil said, "What? The best you're getting is the sword Marduk. You gotta prove to me that you even worthy of getting this heat." When it came to their rematch, Gil had him in a position where he could barely stand. This man had partial immortality and Gil was still giving him the handles.
Bro, stop dick riding, bro. That's all you literally talk about.
The way I see it, I'm just doing my job. He has his own unique clairvoyance that allows him to receive information on anything that he chooses. You have the time where Gil remembered his contact with Bibi on the other side of the moon, which normally should be impossible. When you're looking at Prisma Ilya, he had the power to send Ilya's entire conscience into the past. He was able to pull this off with the help of the Counterforce. He is one of the only people to survive the end of the world in Prisma Ilya. Literally, Darius ended the world in Prisma and Gil just shrugged it off. In Babylonia, Roman tells us that through his clairvoyance, Gil can also see into the future as well. In the UB-Dub route, you had Gil's clairvoyance.
At this point, does this man even need to see into the future? Because all this man's gonna see is victories. I don't think he ever No, in most of these videos, I don't think they ever talk about the losses. Mostly just defeats.
Tell him who Shiro and Archer was before he even saw their capabilities. In Fate Extra, we know that he outperformed Ronnie in a game of chess, which is huge because she comes from the Atlas Academy, a branch who prize themselves on their intellect. He has a unique ability to sense danger before it comes around. He could see straight through Francis Prelati's advanced illusions, something that would normally take mystic eyes to see. You had his intuition tell him that Jester wasn't a human. He used this to discern the fact that the main character's vitals were dropping and you couldn't even tell. He has the ability to see the monoflow of Heracles and Hippolyta back in Strange Fate. His clairvoyance is also something that told him about the skin of Heracles, which is known to heighten his defense. He has the physical strength to slice a boulder in half that weighs at least a ton. His dexterity with his weapons allowed him to block Enkidu's chains of heaven just by throwing his axe. He responded to several of Enkidu's chains at the last second during their battle. In his sparring match with Mash and Medusa, he was able to easily dodge them both at the same time without even attacking back. Going back into how he has access to the elements, he summoned an entire wall of fire against Enkidu just to block one of his attacks. In Babylonia, he takes fire against Enkidu just to block one of his attacks. In Babylonia, he takes a beam to the chest in order to save Rasuka from the great beast Tiamat, then continued to do battle on top of that. In an interlude, he blocked a fatal surprise attack from Amakusa, mentioning that he's the only one that could have pulled this off. The interlude has him fighting against Angra and Amakusa at the same time. They can't do anything with him. Even when they immobilized Gilgamesh, he still had access to his treasures and pulled off his phantasm. He tactfully put a bounded field around the entire city of Uruk to ward off attacks. He was able to shatter Ishtar's gem magecraft the moment she pulled it out with just a flick of his finger. In the underworld, ward off attacks. He was able to shatter Ishtar's gem magecraft the moment she pulled it out.
And she's already broken. Is there anyone that is videos long?
With just a flick of his finger. In the underworld, we find out that he has an uncredited skill in presence concealment. His authority allowed him to fight Ereshkigal's goddess of death, which normally shouldn't even be possible. While he was still human in Babylonia, he had the power to summon 8 different servants on his own merits. He had the authority to race shift Ritsuka against Chaldea's will. He deployed a defense mechanism that blocked out Tiamat's Sea of Life, a feat of him basically negating reality warping concepts. From a beast on top of that, he has certain magecraft that allows him to invoke paralysis. In his caster form, he has phantasms that can devastate the area for miles on end. He can summon 360 of these cannons at the same time. We saw this in his fight against Tiamat. He has weapons that can shoot literal blast of energy at any time. He tactfully shot away Medusa's chains with these same weapons. He has great reaction speed, being able to react to Medusa and Mash at the same time while she was being reinforced by Ritsuka. In the underworld, he managed to destroy Ereshkigal's weapon as the goddess of death. In his fight against Enkidu, this man real life shot an enormous bolt of lightning, leaving Enkidu overwhelmed. In the underworld, he shot out several layers of fire against Eresh. He has another mirror that's similar to the first that allows him to view remote locations, giving him access to the underworld. He has his own unique trap with material that's made from demonic beasts, the trap being strong enough to temporarily hold down Ishtar. As Shadow Gil, we know that he took a laser beam to the chest and his only response was pure laughter. her. He casually blocked off Miyu's attacks with his magical energy shield. He tactfully got trapped on purpose against Angelica just to use her own chains against her. In Ataraxia, he fended off Emiya and Ku at the same time in his child form. He was able to use his charisma and great leadership to bring the best out of a team. He can casually pull clothes out of his gate at any time, doing this for himself and Ilya. He tactfully was able to create a walkway using his magical shields. Even in his shadow form, he was able to create the original version of the Nine Lives Phantasm against Ilya. After exhausting a good portion of his energy fighting off multiple people at once, Gil was still able to hold off Ilya's infinite magical energy for a short amount of time. He has access to his own golden cell phone. Feel free to hit his line. He's the one that broke Shiro out of jail when he was being held captive. A true hero. He went through multiple unnamed items in his gate that he can casually use at his convenience. He has access to a scarf that can shield your physical and your magical presence.
The more and more I hear about this guy, the more and more I wish I had his abilities. Mostly just the gates. For not right reasons. Everybody knows me, you probably already know what I'm probably gonna do. But yeah, I want the gates.
Use this in attempts to hide from the Ainsworths. The only drawback is that it can't hide your scent. When the squad needed it, this man pulled an entire hot spring out of his gate of Babylon. The flexing is just unrivaled. He was able to use his magical shield to quickly deflect one of Angelica's attacks. He has an amulet that he can also use as a flashbang. This was enough to rock the entire castle. In an interlude, he was able to easily destroy a spirit that was summoned by the Grail. This same spirit is said to be on par with the demon god pillar, who are known to be some of the strongest creatures in the verse. He was able to tactfully manipulate his chains and create a sphere to trap Angelica, also using the spears from the outside to give extra piercing damage. He was able to use his authority as a spirit to take the Archer card over Julian, despite the cards being made by the Ainsworths in the first place. He was able to restrain Beatrice, who had her strength doubled at the time and had access to the powers of Magni and Thor. In UB-Dub, he bodied both of Ilya's maids in a matter of seconds of him showing up to the castle. In Fate Prototype, he was going head to head with King Arthur despite being in the Archer class, literally using two swords at once. He was overwhelming Arthur at close range, the two of them showing great endurance, jumping several kilometers into the sky in an instant. He had close range striking techniques, being able to knee Arthur directly in the face. In Fate Prototype specifically, we see him combining these two swords together to create a bow and launch his Phantasm Inky, a move that scaled over the entire city with ease. This too can destroy the world given the right circumstances. We know Shadow Gil, who is usually weaker than the original. He's also shown the ability to survive Ren's gem cannon, which is on par with the hammer of Thor. He survived Bazette punching straight through his chest, even though her hits were reinforced with rune magecraft. He constantly regenerated after taking multiple of these reinforced punches to the body. He literally fired off a phantasm in a split second while he was being attacked. Just his magical aura was stated to be even stronger than Saber Altars, putting him on a whole nother level. This same aura was enough to break through Luvia's gem shields, which we know can boast some high magical defense. He tanked multiple layers of the ceiling falling on top of him. This same ceiling was 1.6 million tons in terms of concrete. He tanked a broken phantasm from Kuro while she was using Excalibur. He used several different types of armor in his gate to block Ilya during their their battle, he impaled Bazette several times with fatal wounds, literally killing her and forcing her to use a resurrection rune. Similar to his fight with Lancelot, Shadow Gil was able to make a defense out of a wall of phantasms, forcing Bazette to use her own to survive. Later on in their fight, he broke through yet another pocket dimension just from winding up his Aya. Once again, you have him summoning his ship Vamana after a prolonged battle and taking tons of damage. In just a few seconds, he leveled an entire mountain by dropping explosions out of his ship alone. He summoned a war god as an extension of himself to fight against Ilya and her group. Even when they tried to bind him with multiple spells, it still wasn't enough to hold him down for long. It has massive destructive power, being able to fight multiple targets at once. Just one swing from this creature was enough to take down half the forest. In the Prismaverse, he has enough influence to take over a person's mind if they're too weak to handle his card. We saw this same situation when he temporarily took control of Miyu. He literally resisted the influence of Pandora's box despite it being said to be a higher dimensional plane. Through the uses of Angelica, we know that he can immobilize or trap his targets with his phantasms alone. Again, he can summon the mountain-sized sword Igalima and his counterpart if he chooses. This is not for the faint of heart. Then you have the time where he tactfully used his chains to grab Miyu out the air. And just one shot from Angelica using Aya was enough to drown out every weapon that Shiro had in stock. Ridiculous. When it comes to Fate in general, Gil is the absolute bar. It's just like he said in Carnival Phantasm. Rules trick, I am the rules. Whenever you hear somebody do a comparison, it always comes back to, but is he better than Gil though? This man can literally destroy worlds, punch through dimensions, warp reality, shift tectonic plates. I gotta hit my man with the EX. Anything lower than that, you're a hater. You're just a hater, and that's okay. There's always gonna be a place for you in the world. At the bottom, if you couldn't tell this already, this is very biased. I got Gil grailed on 2 characters just to show him we wasn't playing around. And his drawbacks is that he didn't flex on y'all sooner. What you thought I was gonna say something bad? It's not his arrogance, it's the story. Gil will put your favorite servant on a t-shirt. Nobody's finessing with drip like this. Just roll out the red carpet. We bleed triumphant over here.
I honestly didn't think he would have begun at EX rank. I thought he would have been somewhere with Ishtar being broken. It's kind of shit. I saw that guy was able to pull off. I really want to know how he's not broken. I'm not too versatile about that. Is EX better or worse than broken? Or is it like on the same par, but it's like broken but not really, so it's justified? But this video has been a long time coming. As you can see why it took so long to try and get out. 38 minutes is the initial video. Well, the end of the video for this probably gonna be like 40 plus long. So I hope you enjoy it. I'll see you in the next video, and I kind of want to do Hook next, but I might do Casual Geographic just because I like the animal stuff in it. Because, well, yeah, you see algorithm, then recommended it. But until next time, see ya.